There is an uncomfortable truth that few are willing to admit. Intelligence is rare, but stupidity is everywhere. Look around. You will find people with money, status, and influence. People who command attention, who have legions of followers, who hold positions of power. And yet, many of them are shockingly, painfully, breathtakingly stupid. But let's be clear, stupidity is not simply a lack of knowledge. No one is born knowing everything. A wise person understands this. They ask questions, they seek truth, and they are humble enough to admit when they are wrong. A stupid person, on the other hand, is not just ignorant. They are willfully ignorant. They reject learning. They defend their mistakes. They confuse loudness with intelligence, confidence with competence, and emotion with logic. And worst of all, they don't even know they're stupid. The great Stoic philosophers Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus warned about the dangers of surrounding yourself with fools. Not because fools are evil, but because they are contagious. If you are not careful, their way of thinking will poison you, their bad habits will infect you, and one day you will wake up and realize you have become one of them. But here's the good news. Stupidity is not a life sentence. It can be cured, but only if you dare to recognize it in yourself. So as you read through these signs of stupidity, don't just laugh at others. Ask yourself, do I do this? Have I ever fallen into these traps? Am I brave enough to change? Because the first step to wisdom is knowing what not to be. If you refuse to be a fool, if you strive to be better, stronger, and wiser every day, then like, share, subscribe, and comment with a story of your self-growth or a battle cry against ignorance. Now let's begin. Number 1, the stupid do not know they are stupid. There is something almost poetic about stupidity. It has no self-awareness. The truly foolish walk through life with the confidence of a seasoned philosopher, convinced that they have all the answers, blind to the fact that they don't even understand the questions. The less they know, the louder they speak. The more ignorant they are, the more certain they become. And this is not just an opinion, science backs it up. Psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger conducted a study proving what many of us already suspected. The dumbest people think they are the smartest. Their research showed that those who perform the worst on tests consistently overestimate their abilities, while those who are genuinely competent often underestimate themselves. In other words, the people who know the least believe they know the most, and the ones who truly understand a subject tend to be more cautious in their conclusions. It's as if intelligence comes with doubt and stupidity comes with blind confidence. You've seen this before. Picture that one coworker who knows absolutely nothing about the job yet insists on giving everyone advice. Or the self-proclaimed expert on social media who, despite never having studied medicine, economics, or history, seems to have strong, unwavering opinions on vaccines, inflation, and ancient civilizations. They speak with absolute certainty, rolling their eyes at professionals who have spent years in the field. They are walking embodiments of the phrase, "A little knowledge is a dangerous thing." The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology gave it a name. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "A man can't learn what he thinks he already knows." And there it is, the core of true stupidity. It is not the lack of knowledge, but the refusal to gain it. A fool is not someone who doesn't know something. A fool is someone who doesn't want to know. They don't question their beliefs. They don't seek new information. They don't even entertain the possibility that they could be wrong. You can see this in everyday life. Imagine two drivers stuck in traffic. One is calm, understanding that the delay is beyond their control. The other is honking furiously, shouting that if they were in charge of city planning, this would never happen. They have no background in urban infrastructure and no knowledge of traffic engineering, but somehow, in their mind, they are more qualified than the professionals who designed the roads. This is stupidity in action, the inability to recognize the limits of one's knowledge. The real tragedy is that this kind of ignorance is nearly impossible to fix. Tell a smart person they might be wrong, and they will reconsider. Tell a fool they might be wrong, and they will double down. Their ego is too fragile to accept reality. Socrates famously said, "The only true wisdom is knowing you know nothing." The fool says, "I already know everything," and that is why they stay foolish. Number 2, bragging about nothing, the art of empty boasting. There's a particular type of person who thrives not on actual achievement but on the illusion of it. They talk big, strut around like they own the world, and sprinkle their conversations with exaggerated stories, fancy terms, and self-aggrandizing nonsense. But when you peel back the layers, when you listen to what they're saying, you realize something disturbing. There's nothing there. This is the person who boasts about wealth but is drowning in debt. The one who brags about their business ventures but has never actually started anything successful. The self-proclaimed expert who, if pressed for real knowledge, would crumble faster than a house of cards in a storm. They live off second-hand wisdom, repeating quotes they barely understand, using buzzwords they overheard, and taking credit for things they never did. Their entire persona is a mirage, carefully designed to impress but utterly empty upon closer inspection. Take, for example, the man who constantly talks about his connections. According to him, he knows people in high places. He hints at insider knowledge as if he's somehow operating on a higher level than the rest of us. But probe just a little deeper, ask for specifics, challenge him on details, and suddenly the smooth talker starts stumbling. The big names he dropped? He met them once, in passing, at an event. The exclusive deals he brags about? They never happened. He thrives in vagueness because specifics would expose the truth. He is a nobody pretending to be somebody. Or consider the woman who floods her social media with extravagant photos, luxury vacations, high-end restaurants, designer outfits. She paints a picture of endless success. But behind the scenes, credit card bills are piling up. The luxury car? It's leased. The fancy meals paid for by someone else. Her life is not about living well, it's about looking like she lives well. Even worse are those who boast about things they do not understand. We've all met them. The guy who claims to be an investment guru, but has never made a profitable trade. The person who knows everything about fitness, but can't do 5 push-ups. The self-proclaimed relationship expert who has never been in a stable relationship. These people love to repeat phrases they heard somewhere, pass them off as their insights, and hope nobody asks too many questions. The Stoics would laugh at such people. Seneca once said, "It is the sign of a great mind to despise greatness and prefer things in measure to things in excess." In other words, truly successful people do not need to brag. The strongest warrior does not go around telling everyone how powerful he is. He simply proves it through his actions. The truly intelligent do not need to remind the world of their intelligence. Their wisdom speaks for itself. The ones who shout the loudest, who constantly seek validation, who feel the need to convince others of their worth, these are the ones who are most insecure. They are not trying to impress you. They are trying to convince themselves. So the next time you meet someone who won't stop talking about how amazing they are, take a step back. Listen carefully. Are they great, or are they just a loud, empty drum? Because as the saying goes, the emptiest vessels make the loudest noise. Number 3. Arguing for the sake of winning, not learning. There's a certain type of person who loves to argue. Not to gain wisdom, not to expand their understanding, but simply to win. They don't listen to counterpoints. They don't consider new perspectives. They don't engage in discussion to exchange ideas. They argue like it's a sport, a battlefield where the only goal is to crush their opponent, no matter how wrong they might be. This is the person who, no matter what evidence you present, will twist the conversation to make themselves look right. Show them facts? They'll call them fake. Quote an expert? They'll dismiss them as biased. Ask them to explain their position logically. They'll change the subject, move the goalpost, or attack you personally. Their goal is not truth, it's dominance. You see them everywhere. The uncle at family gatherings who argues about politics like his life depends on it. The social media warrior who jumps into every comment section with an aggressive opinion and refuses to back down, no matter how ridiculous they sound. The coworker who always has to have the last word, even when they're blatantly wrong. These people are not interested in understanding. They are addicted to the feeling of being right. The Stoics had little patience for such people. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled the Roman Empire with wisdom and restraint, once said, "If anyone can prove and show me that I am wrong in thought or deed, I will gladly change. I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone." A wise person does not fear being corrected. They welcome it because it brings them closer to the truth. A fool, on the other hand, would rather burn in ignorance than admit defeat. Science also supports this idea. Studies in cognitive psychology have shown that when people are presented with facts that contradict their deeply held beliefs, they often double down instead of reconsidering. This phenomenon, known as the backfire effect, explains why some people will fight to defend their views even when all logic and evidence prove them wrong. They do not process new information as a chance to grow. They see it as an attack on their identity. A perfect example of this is arguing with conspiracy theorists. Try telling a flat earther about satellite images, or explaining evolution to someone who believes the Earth is 6,000 years old. Instead of reconsidering, they will just dig deeper, claiming that the images are fake, the scientists are lying, or that you are simply brainwashed. For them, the debate is never about truth. It's about proving they are smarter than you, even when they are demonstrably wrong. Real intelligence is not measured by how often you win arguments, but by how willing you are to change your mind when faced with better evidence. A fool thinks changing their opinion is a sign of weakness. A wise person knows it is a sign of strength. So the next time you find yourself in a debate, ask yourself, are you arguing to learn or just to win? Because if you are unwilling to change your mind, then why are you even speaking at all? Number 4. Talks more than they listen. Empty mind, loud mouth. There is a special kind of fool who loves the sound of their voice more than the wisdom of others. They talk endlessly, interrupt constantly, and dominate every conversation as if their words are gifts to the world. But the real tragedy? They are not saying anything of value. You've met them before. The coworker who jumps into every discussion, even when they have nothing useful to add. The relative at family gatherings who rambles for hours about politics, despite knowing absolutely nothing about how the government works. The social media warriors who post 20-paragraph rants are convinced they are intellectual giants, when in reality, they are just loudly regurgitating whatever nonsense they heard last. These people have one thing in common. They never stop to listen. They mistake talking for intelligence, as if the sheer volume of their words somehow compensates for the emptiness of their thoughts. But talking more does not make you wise, it just makes you annoying. The Stoics valued silence more than speech. Epictetus, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." A truly wise person understands that listening is how you learn, and learning is how you grow. But the fool, they fear silence because silence forces them to confront their ignorance. Modern psychology confirms what the Stoics knew centuries ago. Studies show that people who talk too much, especially those who dominate conversations without listening, often suffer from a mix of overconfidence and insecurity. They talk excessively because they want to appear knowledgeable, but deep down, they fear they are not. It's like an empty drum. The less substance inside, the louder it must be hit to make noise. Look at history's greatest leaders, thinkers, and strategists. They were not the ones who spoke the most. They were the ones who listened, observed, and only spoke when necessary. Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire, yet in his writings, he often reminded himself to be humble, to listen, and to avoid unnecessary words. Meanwhile, the court jesters and fools of his time likely never stopped talking. But who remembers them now? The loudest person in the room is rarely the smartest. The person who never stops talking is usually the one with the least to say. And the person who listens carefully before they speak? That is the person worth paying attention to. So the next time you find yourself in a conversation, ask, am I speaking because I have something valuable to say, or just because I'm afraid of silence? Because if you are always talking, you are never learning. And if you are never learning, then what exactly is the point of all your words? Number 5, attacking the person instead of the argument. When logic fails, insults begin. There is a moment in every bad argument when one side realizes they are losing. Their reasoning has been dismantled, their logic exposed as flawed, and their facts proven false. A wise person, when faced with such a moment, will pause, reconsider, and perhaps even admit they were wrong. But a fool will abandon reason entirely and resort to the only weapon they have left: personal attacks. You've seen it happen. A discussion about politics suddenly turns into, "Oh yeah? Well, what have you done with your life?" A debate about science shifts into, "You probably still live with your parents." An argument about anything quickly derails into insults, mockery, and completely irrelevant personal attacks. It is the intellectual equivalent of flipping the chessboard over when you realize you are losing. The Stoics, who valued reason and discipline above all else, warned against engaging with such people. Marcus Aurelius himself wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." When faced with hostility, a Stoic does not stoop to the same level. They remain composed, knowing that true strength lies in controlling one's emotions, not in throwing childish insults. Epictetus went even further, advising, "If someone speaks badly of you, do not defend yourself against their accusations, but instead reply, 'You don't know me well,' or you would have mentioned more." This is the ultimate response to personal attacks. Not rage, not defensiveness, but pure, unshakable confidence. Psychologists call this behavior ad hominem, a term for arguments that attack a person's character instead of addressing their ideas. Studies show that people resort to personal attacks when they feel threatened, insecure, or unable to counter an argument logically. In essence, insulting someone is an admission of intellectual defeat. It means, "I cannot outthink you, so I will try to outshout you instead." Consider this in real life. You present a well-reasoned argument, supported by facts, and instead of a logical response, the other person gets defensive and starts attacking your background, your job, your intelligence, anything except the actual point being discussed. This is a sign that they are out of their depth, and when someone has already abandoned logic, what is the point of continuing the discussion? A Stoic understands that not every argument is worth having. As Seneca said, "Silence is a lesson learned from the many sufferings of life." When you see that a conversation has devolved into personal attacks, the smartest thing you can do is step back. Do not waste your breath trying to reason with someone who has already chosen emotion over logic. Do not fight battles where victory means lowering yourself to the level of fools. In the end, a person who attacks others instead of defending their argument does not need your anger. They need your pity. Because nothing is more pathetic than a man who has lost the battle of wits and does not even realize it. Number 6. Mistaking feelings for truth. I feel it, so it must be true. There is a dangerous kind of stupidity that has nothing to do with a lack of knowledge. It is the belief that feelings are facts. The idea is that if something feels true, then it must be true. If someone feels offended, then an offense must have been committed. If they feel like an expert, then they must be one. This is how irrationality thrives. This is why people cling to conspiracy theories, reject science, and argue against facts with nothing more than, "Well, that's just how I feel." You've seen this before. Someone is convinced that a person is rude, even though that person said nothing offensive, because they felt slighted. Some refuse to believe evidence because it contradicts their emotions. Someone hears an opinion they dislike, and instead of debating it logically, they say, "That offends me," as if their emotional reaction alone is proof that the argument is invalid. The Stoics would laugh at such people. Epictetus said, "Any person capable of angering you becomes your master." Why? Because if your emotions control you, then anyone can manipulate you. All they need to do is trigger the right feelings, and suddenly you have abandoned reason entirely. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers and emperors, put it even more simply. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This is the fundamental principle of Stoic wisdom. Reality does not care about your feelings. Only weak minds believe that emotions dictate truth. Modern psychology agrees. Studies show that emotions are deeply unreliable as a way of determining reality. They are shaped by bias, past experiences, and even simple biological factors, like hunger or fatigue. Ever notice how people get more irrational when they are tired, more easily offended when they are stressed, more dramatic when they haven't eaten? This is why using emotions as a compass for truth is dangerous, because feelings change, but facts do not. Imagine a pilot flying a plane. Instead of checking the instruments, he says, "I feel like we're going the right way." Or a doctor diagnosing a patient and saying, "I don't need tests, I just feel like it's cancer." You would call them insane. Yet this is how many people navigate life, trusting emotions over evidence, gut feelings over data, outrage over logic. The result? A world where debates are won by who shouts the loudest, where the ability to feel insulted is mistaken for intelligence, and where the truth is drowned out by those who feel the most passionately. A Stoic does not live this way. A Stoic understands that emotions are useful, but they are not authorities. They can inform decisions, but they must never dictate them. The wise man asks, "What is true?" The fool asks, "How does this make me feel?" So the next time someone says, "I feel like this is true," ask them, "But is it?" Because reality does not bend to feelings, and neither should you. Number 7. No self-control. The weakest person is the one who cannot master themselves. Some people believe that strength is about overpowering others, raising their voices, throwing insults, demanding attention. But Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled the vast Roman Empire with wisdom and restraint, understood the truth. The strongest man is the one who can control himself. And by that logic, the weakest man? The one who cannot. The fool is a slave to his emotions. He erupts in anger over small inconveniences. He sulks when things don't go his way. He lashes out when someone disagrees with him. His reactions are not measured. They are automatic, impulsive, and childish. He is like a wild horse with no reins, galloping toward destruction without even realizing it. You see this in everyday life. The man who screams at the barista because his coffee order was wrong. The driver loses his mind over a minor traffic delay. The social media user who flies into a rage over a simple comment. These people do not own their emotions. Their emotions own them. A Stoic, however, is different. A Stoic does not allow the outside world to dictate their inner state. They understand that if you can be provoked, you can be controlled. If a stranger's insult can ruin your day, then that stranger owns you. If a minor setback can send you into despair, then you were never truly in control of your life to begin with. Modern psychology supports this. Studies show that people with low emotional regulation tend to make worse decisions, have weaker relationships, and suffer from higher stress levels. Why? Because instead of responding rationally, they react impulsively. Instead of thinking, they explode. Instead of adapting, they break. Their lack of self-control leads to self-destruction. Think of a martial artist. A skilled fighter does not throw punches wildly. He waits, he observes, and he acts with precision. A fool, on the other hand, flails around, burning his energy on useless aggression, making himself an easy target. Life works the same way. The man who cannot control himself is not strong, he is predictable, weak, and easily manipulated. Seneca, another great Stoic thinker, warned against this lack of discipline. He wrote, "Most powerful is he who has himself in his power." Because at the end of the day, what good is power over others if you have no power over yourself? So ask yourself, do you react or do you respond? Do you control your emotions or do they control you? Because strength is not about how loud you yell, how hard you hit, or how much you intimidate others. True strength is the ability to remain calm in the face of chaos, to master your impulses, and to be untouchable by the petty annoyances of life. That is the strength of a Stoic. That is the strength of a true warrior. Number 8. The victim mentality. Blaming everything but yourself. There is no shortage of people who believe life has conspired against them. No matter what happens, they see themselves as the unfortunate victim of unfair circumstances, of society, of the system, of fate itself. Nothing is ever their fault. Everything is someone else's doing. Did they fail an exam? The teacher was unfair? Did they lose their job? The company was corrupt. Are they broke? The economy is against them. Are they unhappy? It's because of their parents, their childhood, their city, their country. Any reason except their own decisions. This is the mindset of a fool. Because while life is undeniably unfair, wasting time complaining about it changes nothing. The Stoics had no patience for the victim mentality. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire during plagues, wars, and betrayals, yet he never wasted time blaming the world. Instead, he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." A victim sees problems and complains. A Stoic sees problems and asks, "What can I do?" People who constantly blame external forces for their failures do not realize that they are giving away their power. The moment you declare yourself a victim, you are saying, I am powerless, I cannot change my life. And if you believe that, then it becomes true. You surrender control over your fate, not because life took it from you, but because you handed it over willingly. Modern psychology supports this. Studies show that people with a locus of control focused on external factors, society, luck, the government, tend to be less successful, less happy, and more prone to depression. Meanwhile, those who take responsibility for their actions even in difficult situations are more resilient, more productive, and ultimately more at peace. Take two people who grew up poor. One spends his life complaining about inequality, blaming the system, and waiting for someone to fix it. The other acknowledges the unfairness, but focuses on what he can do, learning, working, adapting, improving. Who do you think will rise above? The truth is, life will never be fair. You will be treated unfairly. You will suffer setbacks that are not your fault. You will experience injustice. But so did every great person in history, and they succeeded because they refused to be victims. Epictetus, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, was born a slave. He could have easily seen himself as powerless, doomed to misery. Instead, he trained his mind to be stronger than his circumstances, saying, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." So if you find yourself blaming others for your failures, stop. Ask yourself, what can I do? What is within my control? What steps can I take to change my reality? Because no one is coming to save you, and no one should. The strongest people in history were never victims, they were warriors. The only question is, which one are you? Number 9, dependent, not independent. Waiting for luck, instead of taking action. There is a certain type of person who drifts through life like a leaf in the wind, waiting for luck, waiting for help, waiting for the perfect moment. They dream of success, but only if someone else can make it happen for them. They talk about their ambitions, but take no real steps toward them. They believe that somehow, someday, everything will just magically fall into place. But life does not work that way. The Stoics knew this long ago. Fortune favors the brave, said Seneca, not the passive, not the helpless, not the ones sitting around hoping for a miracle. A man who waits for luck is a man who has already accepted defeat. These people always have an excuse. They are waiting for the economy to improve, waiting for inspiration, waiting for the right opportunity, waiting for motivation to strike, as if success is something that happens to them, rather than something they must chase. And when nothing happens, they blame fate, not themselves. You've seen this mindset in everyday life. The friend who constantly complains about their job but never applies for a new one. The relative who always talks about wanting to start a business but never actually takes a single step toward doing it. The person who desperately wants to be fit but insists they will start next month. They live in an endless cycle of waiting instead of acting. Marcus Aurelius had no patience for such passivity. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. In other words, stop talking and start doing. Action is the only thing that matters. Modern psychology supports this truth. Studies show that people with an internal locus of control, those who believe that their actions shape their destiny, are significantly more successful than those who rely on external factors like luck, fate, or other people. Those who take initiative, even in small ways, build momentum. And once they start moving, opportunities come. Think of two people who want to write a book. One waits for the perfect time, for inspiration, for a sign from the universe. The other simply starts writing, badly at first but consistently. A year later, one has a manuscript. The other is still waiting. The same applies to money, relationships, career, and personal growth. Success is never handed out freely. It is taken by those who refuse to wait. The world does not owe you a break. No one is coming to rescue you. The difference between winners and losers is simple. Winners act, losers wait. So the next time you find yourself waiting for the right moment, stop. That moment will never come. Start now, because those who wait for luck will die waiting, while those who move forward will create their fortune. Number 10, living to impress others. All flash, no substance. There are two types of people in this world, those who build real value and those who pretend to have it. The second group is exhausting to watch. They live, not for themselves, not for purpose, not for growth, but for the applause of others. Every decision they make is carefully calculated to impress, to dazzle, to show off. But if you strip away the designer clothes, the expensive cars, the Instagram filters, what's left? Nothing. These people confuse wealth with worth. They think success is about having the biggest house, the trendiest fashion, the flashiest lifestyle. They flood social media with pictures of vacations, luxury meals, and name-brand everything, desperate to be seen as successful rather than being successful. But deep down, they know the truth. They have built nothing. They are empty, and their possessions are their only identity. The Stoics saw this foolishness for what it was. Seneca, one of Rome's richest and wisest men, wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." True wealth is not in things. It is in the freedom from needing things. A man who constantly needs to prove his status is a slave to it. You've seen this play out in real life. The guy with the least luxury car, flexing at red lights, but struggling to pay rent. The woman who maxes out her credit card for designer bags while living paycheck to paycheck. The influencers who curate a perfect online life while secretly drowning in debt. It's all an illusion, a performance for an audience that doesn't even care. Modern psychology confirms what the Stoics taught centuries ago. Studies show that people who attach their self-worth to material things experience higher levels of anxiety, stress, and dissatisfaction. They constantly compare themselves to others, chasing a happiness that never comes. Because no matter how much they buy, there's always someone richer, flashier, and more successful to make them feel inadequate. Contrast this with a truly successful person. Do you think Warren Buffett wastes time showing off? Does a master martial artist feel the need to tell everyone how strong he is? Do the wisest minds in history brag about their intelligence? No, because real value doesn't need validation. A Stoic lives for a purpose, not for applause. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, walked in simple robes despite ruling the world's greatest empire. Why? Because he knew greatness is quiet. The ones who shout the loudest about their success are often the most insecure. Real power, real wisdom, real success, it doesn't beg to be noticed. So if you catch yourself making decisions just to impress others, stop. Ask yourself, if no one could see what I own, would I still want it? If no one could hear about my success, would I still pursue it? Because a life spent chasing approval is a life never truly lived. Number 11. Living for the moment, blind to the future. The curse of short-term thinking. A fool does not think beyond today. They make decisions based on impulse, based on what feels good right now, without ever considering the consequences. If it satisfies a craving, they indulge. If it releases frustration, they lash out. If it brings immediate pleasure, they chase it, no matter the cost. This is the mindset of a child, not an adult. A child eats candy until they're sick because they don't think about tomorrow's stomachache. A child throws a tantrum because they don't understand that their words can hurt others. A child lives for instant gratification, unable to delay pleasure for a greater reward. But what excuse does a grown adult have for behaving the same way? Take, for example, the person who abuses alcohol or drugs. They know, deep down, that it will wreck their health, their mind, and their relationships. But they do it anyway, because it numbs the pain today. The long-term consequences? That's a problem for future them. And so they continue, night after night, until one day their body is failing, their finances are ruined, and their loved ones have given up on them. Or consider the one who eats recklessly, devouring junk food with no control. They ignore the warning signs, the rising weight, the sluggishness, the doctor's concerns. The momentary pleasure of taste is worth more to them than their future well-being. Then one day, they wake up with chronic disease, struggling to breathe, wondering how it got this bad. The answer? One careless choice at a time. And what about the hothead who lets rage control them? They get angry and explode, screaming, breaking things, saying words they can never take back. In their mind, the emotion justifies the action. But they forget something important. While their anger might fade, the damage remains. A child might cry and be forgiven, but an adult who lashes out repeatedly, they lose the respect of their friends, their family, and their dignity. Because at some point, apologies are not enough. People just stop listening. The Stoics were very clear on this. A person who cannot control their impulses is not free. Epictetus warned, "No man is free who is not master of himself." A slave to desire, a prisoner of anger, a captive of momentary pleasure. This is not strength, this is weakness. Modern psychology calls this delayed gratification, and studies prove its importance. The famous Stanford marshmallow experiment showed that children who could resist eating a marshmallow immediately, in exchange for 2 marshmallows later, grew up to be more successful, healthier, and emotionally stable. The ability to think long-term is one of the greatest predictors of success. The fool, however, sees a marshmallow and devours it instantly, only to regret it later. So ask yourself, are you thinking ahead or just reacting to the present? When you're about to indulge in something destructive, when you feel the urge to lash out, when you crave something you know is bad for you, stop. Look beyond the next 5 minutes. Ask, what will this cost me in the long run? Because a great life is not built on impulse. It is built on discipline, foresight, and the strength to control oneself. And if you cannot master yourself, then someone else or something else will do it for you. Number 12, the fool does not understand happiness. Chasing shadows, ignoring the present. A fool spends their entire life searching for happiness in all the wrong places. They chase it in wealth, in status, in admiration, in things they cannot control. Always looking ahead, always regretting behind, but never truly living now. They worry endlessly about the future, agonizing over things that may never happen. They replay the past like a broken record, regretting things they cannot change. Yet somehow, the present moment, the only thing they own, is wasted in complaints, anxiety, and distraction. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled an empire and faced betrayals, wars, and plagues, understood this well. He wrote, "Do not waste time arguing what a good man should be one." In other words, happiness is not found in thinking, regretting, or worrying. It is found in action. But the fool? The fool does not act. They wait, they wish, they dream of a perfect future but do nothing to create it. And when reality does not match their fantasies, they sink into bitterness, blaming life, fate, or other people. They never realize that happiness is not something to be found, it is something to be built. This is why they live by trends, not by purpose. One day, they believe success is about getting rich. The next, they believe it's about fame. Then they convince themselves that true happiness is in luxury vacations, a perfect relationship, or becoming an influencer. They chase the next big thing, thinking it will finally bring them fulfillment. But when they get there, they feel just as empty as before. This is the tragedy of modern life. People scroll endlessly through social media, envying strangers who seem to have it all. They compare their messy, complicated lives to the curated perfection of others. They tell themselves, if only I had what they have, I'd be happy. But what they do not see is that those same people, behind the filters, feel just as lost. The Stoics warned against this trap. Seneca said, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." If your mind is always in the past or the future, you are never truly present. If your happiness depends on what others have, you will never find your own. If you do not define what truly matters to you, you will forever be chasing someone else's dream. Modern psychology agrees. Studies show that people who focus on the present moment, whether through mindfulness, gratitude, or purposeful work, are significantly happier and more resilient. Meanwhile, those who live in constant comparison and external validation are more prone to anxiety, depression, and dissatisfaction. So ask yourself, what makes you happy? Not what society tells you, not what Instagram tells you. What do you truly want? If you don't know, then every achievement, every success, every milestone will feel empty, because none of it was truly yours to begin with. A wise person understands that happiness is not something you chase, it is something you create, moment by moment, decision by decision. A fool waits for it to arrive, never realizing that it was within them all along. Conclusion: being foolish is not a permanent condition. It is a choice. You cannot control the intelligence you were born with, but you can control how much you learn, how much you grow, and whether you stay ignorant or rise above it. A wise person is not someone who knows everything, but someone who knows they do not. They do not argue to win. They seek the truth. They do not pretend to be superior. They simply improve, step by step, every single day. They recognize their own mistakes, not to dwell in shame, but to correct them and move forward. If you saw parts of yourself in this list, do not fear. Recognizing ignorance is the first step to defeating it. The greatest mistake is not being wrong, it is refusing to change. The Stoics believed that wisdom is not a gift reserved for the lucky few, but a path open to anyone brave enough to walk it. Victory Stoic is for those who refuse to live in darkness and who strive for clarity, strength, and mastery over their own lives. If you are one of them, like, share, subscribe, and comment on a foolish habit you once had but have since conquered. Because the only real failure in life is choosing to stay the same.